11-year MLS pro Quincy Amarikwa here, and you're now listening to the Perfect Soccer Podcast, where your host goes one-on-one to get to know your favorite professional soccer players, both on and off the pitch. Because how better to learn what it takes to become a pro soccer player other than directly from pro soccer players? Today's episode is brought to you by PerfectSoccerSkills.com, the #1 and only platform you'll ever need to connect with and learn from pro soccer players. Learn more and enter to win weekly soccer prizes, goals, balls, jerseys, player meet and greets, and more by heading over to PerfectSoccerSkills.com/PSTM to enter to win for free today. With that said, please enjoy today's episode.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Perfect Soccer Podcast. Our special guest today is George Davis, the fourth. George, how's it going?
Oh, good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. Let's go back in time a little bit. What's your first memory of playing soccer?
My first memory, man, Paris Island, South Carolina. I was 4 years old. Don't know how I remember, maybe because I still have my little shirt, had my name and number on the back. But yeah, that's how I got started. My father was in the Marine Corps. We were on base, and that's the first go, man. Paris Island Cyclones.
That's awesome that you remembered that one, and you answered it so fast. Usually people are like thinking.
Yeah, I mean, that's, right around that time I was in South Carolina playing. Right after that, we moved to Ohio, and right around the U.S. World Cup in '94. So I remember my dad recorded all the games on VHS. We had like 3 games per tape, and that's kind of what started my passion for the sport, love for the game, and just grew from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know you just said your dad was in the military. So what was that like moving around, and then Ohio became your home base, right?
Yeah, so, all the movement was kind of when I was real young, so I don't really remember much of it. Once I got into grade school, we settled down in Ohio, moved to Lima, Ohio, actually, which is about an hour west of Columbus. So, yeah, moved there right around the age of 5 and stayed there and played soccer growing up in Ohio. It was kind of all over the place because, there wasn't very competitive teams around my city. So in order to get the level and get the quality of coaching that I desired, I had to drive up north to Toledo, about an hour trip. And then eventually that led to, going out to Cleveland and Columbus and even driving south down to Dayton every once in a while. So people ask me where I'm from or where I grew up playing. I always just say Ohio because I feel like I played in every field in that state. So.
Yeah, for sure. And then, tell me a little bit, now that you mentioned that, like what was your recruiting process like out of high school?
Yeah, man. So in high school, went to a fairly small school. The level wasn't that high in terms of like high school soccer. But lucky for me, my parents were willing to drive me around, and I had friends who were also playing club ball. So I was able to put me into a spotlight a little bit. I really didn't start the recruiting process until probably, junior year of high school, sophomore year of high school. And I laugh about it because kids nowadays, they have all the video and recordings and pages. And, for coaches, it's almost like you go to a showcase tournament and they give you a full out pamphlet with all your information. And they really make the process a lot smoother than what it was like for me. I kind of relied on my talent, thinking that a coach is going to see me and pick me out. And, now that I'm on the other side, it's funny. It's like you go to a tournament and you're watching hundreds of players, and I thought these coaches would just select me because I was good, or they'll see me in a moment. But, so I didn't really have a bunch of schools looking at me, but I had some pretty good schools. Akron was an option. I ended up going to Bowling Green State University, and that was really more of a financial decision, if I have to be honest, like trying to get as much of my school paid for as possible. And then didn't work out there. So that's when I transferred to University of Kentucky. A friend of mine was there, and they were having some success, and coach showed some interest. So, I made that move, and it was a good move for me personally and off the field, more so probably than on the field. But, you talk about the recruiting process. I know that's different, for all players, but I laugh every time I think about what the players have today versus what it was like for myself getting recruited.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Actually, it's funny enough. A couple episodes ago, I had a woman on that went to Bowling Green. She was actually her name's Chelsea Washington. She was actually the first. She got drafted in like I don't know, maybe like 4 years ago. So she was the first Bowling Green player from the women's side to get drafted.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the women's side, they had a pretty decent program when I was there. The men's program was struggling at the moment. They were on their way up. Had to kind of revamp the coaching staff and a lot of new players, but it was an opportunity for me to play too, and I knew I wanted to come in and try to make an impact wherever I went to.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, what was that like going from like a smaller school like Bowling Green to like a big school like Kentucky?
It was a different transition.
Upgrade?
Sure, yeah. Even in terms of like some of the amenities, you know, like you take it for granted sometimes how nice the weight rooms are and the locker rooms and, a couple pairs of boots and all the kit you need, as a college player. But it was good, the school, it was good for me that I was able to get away a little bit, kind of get out of my immediate area. Been in Ohio for, several years. So it was good for me to kind of change the scene and be in a different environment. And then, as you know, UK athletics is top in the basketball program and all that, and SEC football. So it was unique that, the SEC doesn't have men's soccer programs. It was just us in South Carolina. But it was still a great experience.
Yeah, for sure. And then I guess, like, was there a moment ever in college that you knew you could go pro?
Believe it or not, man, early in, when I was early on, I was really hungry. Like, I'm going to play professional ball. That was my mission.
Mm-hmm.
But at Kentucky, I kind of faded out. I started, I didn't have the most success. I wasn't banging in goals or, thinking about entering the draft. Nobody was really talking to me in that light. So, I started kind of preparing for other things. I was preparing to go to grad school. I had always had, interest in law. And then my roommate at the time, he was, the All-American. He was a top player. He ended up getting drafted to DC United. And that's when I kind of thought about it. And I'm like, man, I could be a pro, I played at the level. A lot of guys, I start seeing friends and different people kind of go on and get opportunities. And so that's when I kind of started to, believe it for myself. Soon after I graduated, I got an opportunity with Dayton Dutch Lions in the USL, and it led to a whole career. So it kind of came out of nowhere. But, I always tell young players this. For me, had I kind of believed it or had more belief early on, or more actuality early on, it would have helped me a lot more. So, ironic, I was talking to a group of players this morning. I asked them, how many of you want to play pro soccer? And a young lady raised her hand and said, well, maybe. And it's like, ain't no maybes here. Either you do or you don't. You go all in. So that was a message that I wish I had taken on board. But ultimately, it helped me and led to a career. And I learned a lot from those moments.
Yeah, for sure. And then what was that like? You started out in USL 2 league, and then you got moved up to USL, the top league. So what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, man, I was a little bit, I was just blessed to be able to keep playing, and the money was nothing at the time. It was, but I was like, wow, these guys want to pay me to go play football. Happy days.
Yeah.
It was actually a unique experience because it was, the Dayton Dutch Lions had started and this idea of, creating a professional pathway. And so they brought over several players from Holland, from the Netherlands, guys that played in the Dutch Eredivisie, played in Bundesliga. And it was kind of like a summer thing for those guys, but it opened my eyes to the level. I even had some opportunities after that to potentially go and play in Germany and some other places. So it kind of showed me the level. The coach was Sonny Saloy, who, won Champions League with Ajax, played for the Netherlands, and, a really, really top player. And he kind of instilled in me a belief and confidence that, hey, you can go on and play at a level. So after that summer, it was just PDL at the time, but they were paying the players. And so I'm thinking, hey, I've done well here. I'm going to go on. I started, going to some trials. I ended up getting some interest from like Charleston Battery and Richmond Kickers and some other USL sides. But before I could make that move, the Dutch Lions group, they went ahead and went up to the USL Pro. That was when the league was kind of rebranded to USL Pro. And so I stayed there for an extra year, and maybe a blessing in disguise because I played, every minute, played a bunch of games, was able to score some goals. And that's when I really started to see the recognition and start to believe that, hey, you can go on and make a career out of this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So what happened? Like you were like 5 years pro, and then I feel like then you was like looking at your stats and like playing more games after like 5 years, like, and then you had a long career after like another 5 years. So what changed? I guess.
Uh, Confidence, belief, the system. I found myself in a groove. To be honest, that's why I always talk to players. I'm like, man, believe it early and put yourself out there and really go for it, because by the time I started to, I always went for it. I was always a hard worker. I always did the intangible things. I always believed in myself, but there's another level to it, right? So, it wasn't until I was, 2 or 3 years in that I was, I saw myself as that. Got an opportunity with Columbus Crew. Was invited to preseason with Houston and DC, and for reasons that we don't like to speak about, none of those worked out. But that was kind of when I was like, okay, I'm here to win. I'm here to make impact, and that's what I aim to do. So Richmond Kickers, LA Blues, those environments really propelled me, and I was playing a lot of games and producing a lot of goals and different things like that. So just kind of built on that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's kind of like crazy to think about, like, being a pro for 5 years, and then you just like, maybe you're not thinking like what you can do, and then you just like go off for the next 5 years.
When I made that move to Louisville, it's like I was getting a little bit older in terms of, going into the MLS and still trying to kind of, chase those, opportunities. So when I was looking at contracts and opportunities, it was like, okay, where can I go and win and enjoy my football, And at Louisville, I knew James O'Connor from my time in Orlando, and I knew what he was about. I knew he wanted to win. I knew he was going to create a good environment, a good culture, and continue to try to make me a better player and better person. So, that's when I got to Louisville, and it's nothing but success from the time I got here. And it kind of propelled me into leadership roles and started looking at the club in different ways. And it's kind of funny to look at it now, because I'm still here and doing a lot of things for the club. So.
Yeah. Speaking of leadership roles, you became assistant coach in 2012 in colleges, and so you did that as well while you're playing. So how did you balance all that?
Yeah, so the college, assistant coach thing was more of an off-season thing. Early on in the USL, the seasons weren't as long, so we were getting done by, the end of September. We'd be, done playing, and I wasn't making championship runs with my teams at that time outside of Orlando. So I would go home, and there was an NAIA school in my hometown, Lima, Ohio. It was Northwestern Ohio, and the coach reached out to me one time and was like, "Hey man, I don't know if you're ever around, but if you are around, we'd love to have you." And I'm thinking ahead, and I always love the game, so I'm like, "Yeah, let me see what this is about." So, the NAIA game is a little bit different, so it was a lot of international players, a lot of international flavor, and some real good quality, to be honest. And so that group, I went on to coach with them for about 3 years, and that was before I made my move to Louisville. When I got to Louisville, my assistant coach in college is a head coach at a Division III school here in Indiana, Southern Indiana. And he asked me to, "Hey, while you're around, if you have time, you want to help out?" And I said, why not? He understood my schedule and demand on my time, and that my focus was on being a player, but still allowed me to come around the guys and, run some sessions and be a part of the group. And it helped me in my development, and I like to say and hope that I was able to help some of those collegiate players. And, it led to so much more, leadership roles. You're talking 2018, we ended up coaching the team for a couple.
Yeah, you gotta tell me about that. How did you actually play and coach at the same time?
Yeah, man, it's a wild story. Yeah, so
it's some old school stuff.
It is, man. It is. So 2018, O'Connor, he got an opportunity to go and coach the MLS side, and left here mid-season. And at the time, the club didn't want to just go and hire a coach right away. They wanted to make the right pick. They didn't want to disrupt things. We were coming off a championship the previous year. So, yeah, man, they called us in the office, myself and two other players, Luke Spencer, Paulo Del Piccolo. And they were like, "Hey, you guys are, leaders of this locker room. We don't want to, disrupt what you guys have going on, and we believe in you. You guys, think you can lead the team." And so we did, man. They called us the triumvirate, which was a wild time. And we went about 6 weeks, and we coached ourselves. Literally, we held down the locker room. The team was amazing from a mentality perspective that even allowed that to happen in terms of like the respect and the trust. When you got teammates picking your team and telling you you're not in the first 11, or telling you got to sit in the stands, or giving you tactics and all these different things, it was a whole experience, but ended up, turning out well. We went like 4-1-1. We got a beating by Chicago Fire that year in the Open Cup of the quarterfinals, but outside of that, we were relatively successful. And John Hackworth joined the team as the head coach that year towards the end of the season, and we ended up winning the championship again. So all in all, it was quite the experience, man, in terms of like, you're a player one moment, and the next thing you know, you're being asked to write up training sessions and pick a team and give a scout and all these different things. But we got through it, and it was cool.
That's crazy. On your ring, do you have a coach and player?
I don't, man. Just my name, but that's a good shout. I should have done that. Yeah. I'll be honest, man. By the time the end of that 6 weeks was up, man, I was like, all right, where's the coach at? Man, I just want to focus on.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It was a lot. I remember my first training session, like the first training session after we were managers, and I was in shambles. I couldn't even connect a pass, man. I was thinking about everything else except for playing. So gained a lot of respect for coaches just in a sense of the preparation, the time, and the difficulty of decision making, right? Sometimes I think that gets overlooked.
Yeah, for sure. That must have been also like a weird dynamic of like, it's your teammates and then they're like, oh, why aren't you playing me?
Yeah. It's good, man. There's so many stories, man. Like the first time we had to pick a team, the next morning we were away at Tampa. We come downstairs and guys that like weren't in the team, like they didn't want to sit and eat breakfast with us type of thing. It's like, but it was good for everybody, man. I know everybody learned a lot from that experience.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know exactly what year it was, but you guys actually beat the New England Revolution of the MLS and the US Open Cup. So what was that like?
Yeah, that was the same year, man. So that was the year we made the Open Cup run. It was our team, we believe we could play with anybody, to be honest, so it wasn't like we would come up against MLS teams or MLS foes and be intimidated or, think we don't have a chance. And all our preseason games, whenever we would face opponents from the MLS or higher levels, we would always compete, so we went into the game, believe we can win. And, our coach was very honest in terms of, hey, we're not coming in here to just have a game. We're coming in here to win. So, that was a good team that year. I believe Friedel was the coach of that group, and, a lot of good players. And we ended up winning 2-1. Omby scored a banger to end it. And the goal we conceded was quite poor, to be honest. So good result. But that the tough one is, when you get to the deeper parts of the tournament and the depth, I think overall that was the downfall. That Chicago Fire team we faced had Schweinsteiger and some pretty top players, and they were a good team.
Yeah, for sure. I got to ask you the hard question. Which championship team was better, 2017 or 2018?
Oh, man. That's a good one. I'll say 2017, every field player on the team scored. That was a very tight-knit group. In terms of depth, I think I would have to go with the 2017 team. Very similar rosters, but in terms of heart, I got to go with the 2018 team. That year was tough. But the beauty of it was the teams were basically the same. I mean, it was only a few changes. A big player, Mark Anthony Kaye was a player we had in 17. He went on to go on to LAFC that following year, so we missed him. But it was some good talent in those groups.
Enjoy learning what it takes to become a better player from professional soccer players? Well, how would you like to work with professional players one-on-one? Now you can with Be Pro by Perfect Soccer. Head over to perfectsoccerskills.com/BEPRO to apply to work with our network of pro players today.
And then what ultimately made you retire? And I think you officially made it in 2022.
Yeah, man, that was for me, I was, getting to a point where I had played, 11 years in the USL, and I knew that I had other things in my aspirations, off the field, and I kind of was anxious to get to those. I started feeling myself, mentally not check out, but my motivations were changing a little bit. It was, I had won some games. I was the mentor in the locker room, and I've always kind of been a guy who's like thirsty to learn and wants to be kind of the mentee more so. And I think that's when I kind of ultimately made the decision that, hey, there's a lot out there that you want to do, and this might be the best time to start to pursue some of those things. And my body was ready, my mind was ready. So one thing I'm really, really grateful for is that I made that choice, and it wasn't made for me. And I'm happy with it. I'm at peace with it, and it's been a good 2+ years since.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it seems like throughout your career, you almost like you knew like you had to have a plan for after soccer. So I feel like you were prepared just by talking to you for this last 30 minutes. And now, like, how is your role now as the director of the LouCity Racing Foundation?
Yeah, so when the club, the club's grown rapidly. So in 2020, they added the NWSL side. They played their first season in 2021, and that was right around the time where I was, going to be leaving the field. And so the club wanted to create a foundation, basically a charitable arm to the club that breaks down those barriers that we see in this pay-to-play model in the U.S. Everyone who's played the game in the U.S. knows what is required to be able to compete at a high level, to get quality coaching, to be able to play in the big tournaments and play for the big clubs. So the LouCity and Racing, they wanted to do something about that in terms of the Louisville community and uplift the community that served them so well. So, having good relationships with ownership and the president at the time, they, brought me in and asked me if this was something that I'd be interested in. When I was, because they knew I was coming to the end of my career. They knew I had expressed that interest. And yeah, I kind of ran with it. I joined the coaching staff with with Danny Cruz the year after I stopped playing, and stayed involved, stayed in the locker room, served as more of like a mentor and individual, and helped with training and tactics and some technical things. And and then that's when the foundation started in middle of 2022. So I took that role as a director, and it's me and one other, and now we just hired someone else. So it's three of us taking this project on, and we've done some phenomenal work. Engaged with almost 5,000 kids over the last 2 years, implementing programs, clinics, providing scholarships to academies, and building play spaces. And it's just been a really cool experience for me to give back to some of these kids who otherwise wouldn't have an opportunity, or trying to give kids opportunities that I had that allowed me to go on and be successful. And the beauty of it is that we use soccer, right, as a tool. But at the end of the day, when you play any sport, you're trying to give kids, the very things that can make you successful in any field. So it's like, are they being good people? Are they being honest? Are they committed? Do they show some humility? They know how to deal with conflict? What's their value system like? Good character. So, we understand that every kid we come across is not going to be a pro soccer player, or even a pro football, pro basketball player. But regardless of what they choose to do, we try to leave something in them that's going to help them in whatever walk of life they choose.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's awesome. Like, the team brought you back in. I think that's cool. Like, I think that shows like the team just being, adapted to their players and helping them out after. Because I know a lot of times it could be hard for athletes to give up the sport they love.
Yeah, and I get to stay around it too, right? Yeah. So it's like I'm not giving it up completely. Now I still get to go on the field, kick around, have fun with them, And then the cool part is when I take them and bring them around the pro players, it's all love there, right? And there's a lot of love shown both ways. So it's been fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, you ready for the Quincy questions?
All right, let's get these Quincy questions in.
What's the most important skill or quality you feel made you successful as a pro player?
Technical, I'd say probably, like my ability to create space, 1v1, that type of stuff. From a intangible thing, I'd say just my perseverance. Like I never quit. I was a real hard worker. You couldn't tell me no. And probably the main thing that allowed me to keep on playing for as long as I did.
Definitely. What do you think the biggest mistake pro players are making?
Oh, I would say, that's a tough one. Quincy ain't playing around, is he? I would say thinking, too nearsighted, and not buying into bigger pictures, like sometimes I feel like I've seen a lot of players come into an environment and they're only really thinking about the next game, the next season, and in that moment. And kind of not, and it makes it difficult for them to buy into the big picture. We used to always say like team success is individual success, and it's funny, the players that I see achieve the most are those that are more interested in the team dynamic, the trust of the coaches, trust of the players. It's a tough one though too, right? Because I wish, as part of my thing in my career is I was like, man, I could have been more selfish, right? I could have been a little less of a team player, but ultimately I think that's the character trait, or what I see a lot of pro players that have success are all bought into the team dynamic.
Yeah, for sure. What advice? I know you kind of gave advice throughout the interview, but I got to ask you. So, what advice would you give young players, either like trying to get a scholarship or trying to make a pro league?
Believe in yourself, and control the controllables is what I always say. Right, like I can't control what coaches come to see me. I can't control what coaches like me. All I can do is my job and what I'm good at, and the confidence part. When you play with confidence, you probably enjoy it more. When you're not playing under pressure, and that would be my thing, right? Focus on yourself and go for it, man. Just go for it. There's nothing, ain't nothing to lose, right? Like if this is what you want to do, is what you think you can do, and nobody's gonna tell you no except for yourself.
Why are you passionate about soccer?
Because of what it provided for me, and not in terms of financial, but my friends, the culture, who I am, my characters, the things I've learned from, working in teams to dealing with conflict, and, all of the experiences that I've had, and definitely the international aspect of it. I love culture. I love meeting people from different parts of the world. I love learning new languages and all these things. And it's the world sport. So I have to say it's probably, why the game has captured me the way it has.
Yeah. All right. These next two you could either answer them soccer related or life related.
Okay.
What's something that most people think is true that you believe isn't?
Oh man. I don't know if most people believe it. Money makes you happy.
Right. I like that. What is something you would move forward with if you weren't scared of what would happen if things didn't go well?
I don't know if it should be recorded, but stop everything I'm doing, move to another country, and immerse myself in a completely different language.
All right. I like that. No one ever said that. I'm actually surprised that no one said like, I just moved to a whole different country.
Yeah, man. I meet people here, in the States, we meet a lot of people who come here, whether they come on their own or they come, by happenstance, and they learn the language, or they're forced to learn the language. They're forced to adapt to a different culture. And I've always admired that about people. Like, incredibly difficult. And I wonder what that would be like, right?
Yeah, I'm always like, when people come here and they're like, oh, yeah, I just learned English. I'm like, how? Like, how? Because I was like, I can't learn Spanish that fast, or like another language.
Yeah. I mean, like, I had a Portuguese teammate. He came over, Brazilian teammate. He came over, and he didn't speak much any English, Within a year, he adapted. He's taking college classes and speaking the language. And I was like, man, that's impressive. But like I said, that's why the immersion, right? You immerse yourself in it. Don't give yourself a choice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I never experienced that, like being in a foreign country. Like, I'm sure I would pick up on the language I get. I mean, I would hope so, I guess.
Yeah. You would faster than you think,
Yeah. Are you ready for these last ones with some fun questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So you're a fourth generation name. Like, what does that mean to you? And like, how like, what's the background on it?
Yeah. Funny story, man. Me and my father, 20 years apart. My dad and my grandfather, 20 years apart. My grandfather, my great grandfather, 20 years apart. None of us have a middle name. And we're the Georges, them damn Davises is what our family says. But yeah, man, the names meant a lot to me. I was lucky. I knew my great grandfather. He passed away in 07, 06. So, I was graduated from high school. I got a graduation picture with all four of the Georges, all of us together. So I was able to learn a lot from my great grandfather. Learned a lot from my grandfather. And my dad has always been, my champion and mentor. So just the relationships that I've had with them is one of the main reasons why I'm so passionate about my name. Funny story about that. Come around that time, 2007, everybody in my family's like, "Hey, George, don't have no kids, man. You got a lot to do. Like, don't go have no kids." And then now everybody's like, "Oh, you broke the cycle. Like, where's George 5? Like what's going on?" So no, I am very, proud of my name. And that comes from the relationships that I was very fortunate to have with those men.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like that's super rare to actually know the fourth or the first.
Yeah. That's I guess the beauty of having a child at a young age, right?
Yeah. I always think about that recently, since I'm like 31 now, and I'm like, I see, and I'm like, obviously it's like hard when you have kids young, but then I'm like, yo, kind of be dope because then you're younger.
Yeah. Man, I got like friends our age, I'm similar like age, so guys our age, and they got kids that are like teenagers, young, and it's like, man, I'd love to have a little guy, but at the time, like 10, 15 years ago, there's no way I was about that, so
for sure.
Life happens, man. Life happens.
All right, I think I know your answer for this one, but is it soccer or football?
Football. Yeah. I don't know. It's funny, I think I use football more because I don't know, more people understand it outside of just here in the U.S. But there's all these stories about why we call it soccer. So we know what it is.
For sure. Messi or Ronaldo?
Messi.
Yeah. Why Messi?
I mean, the way he plays, I like watching him play, right? Like, he does things that you don't see often. I like a lot of respect for Ronaldo. He turned into an absolute killer in front of goal, and he maximized his physical capabilities and his technical. So a lot of respect for Ronaldo, but in terms of enjoyment of the game, got to go with Messi, and what he's done is unbelievable.
For sure. All right, last one. Who would you want to do a jersey exchange with? Anybody, all time?
Anybody, all time? I'd have to say Ronaldinho.
All right. Yeah, that'd be dope. He used to be the man back in the day. I remember playing him in FIFA all the time, like putting that speed burst on.
Yeah. And the way he just, the smile, and, I feel like he's be a guy that you would want to have a conversation with. He feels so like someone he would, just be a good guy to be around. And he was obviously an amazing footballer. So, Ronaldinho.
For sure. All right, George. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And could you let the listeners know where to follow you at?
Yeah, man. Appreciate you guys having me. You can find me, IG, G Davis IV, LouCity Racing Foundation. You want to support, check in. Anybody comes to Louisville, lovers of the game, man, give me a shout. Appreciate you guys' time. Shout out to Perfect Soccer.
Quincy Amarikwa here, and thanks again for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to share it with someone you feel will get some value from it. And if you could take a moment to leave a review of our podcast wherever you're listening and let us know who you'd like us to interview next, we'll get working on that right away. You can listen to this full episode and more at perfectsoccerskills.com/radio. That's perfectsoccerskills.com/RADIO. You can also enter to win free weekly soccer prizes, goals, balls, jerseys, player meet and greets, and more by heading over to perfectsoccerskills.com/PSTM to enter to win for free today.